On a stormy night in 1964, two paranormal investigators, Ed Warren and his pregnant wife Lorraine Warren, visit an antique store for their first case. Ed specializes in demonology, while Lorraine possesses strong psychic abilities. Across from them sits a distressed woman named Victoria, who begins to tell her story. Victoria explains that her father often claimed something was following him and that he heard voices. At first, she assumed it was due to his old age, but then one day she found him dead, hanging from a rope. With tears in her eyes, she continues. After that, she says, everything went quiet. But soon, I began to feel it too, like someone was always watching me. When Lorraine offers to check the storeroom, Ed hesitates and warns her that it might not be a good idea, but Lorraine reassures him that she'll be fine and steps inside. She carefully observes the antique pieces until she notices a strange, ornate mirror. Immediately, she senses a presence within it. Speaking softly, she says to the spirit, "I'm Lorraine, and I'm here to help you." When there's no response, she gently touches the mirror. Suddenly, it cracks, and a terrifying vision flashes before her eyes, and she immediately goes into labor. Ed rushes in to find Lorraine clutching her stomach and immediately drives her to the hospital. Concerned, he asks her what happened in that room. Lorraine whispers, "There was a mirror in there, Ed, and something evil was inside it." At the hospital, a nurse asks when Lorraine is due. "Next month," Ed replies. As the doctor prepares Lorraine for delivery, the power goes out. In the darkness, she calls out for Ed and sees a creature crawling across the ceiling. At that moment, Ed bursts into the room, and the doctor allows him to stay to help calm Lorraine. The doctor tells her to push, and Lorraine screams as she tries, but he stops her, explaining that the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. After a tense moment, they manage to cut it and instruct her to push one final time. She does, and then the room falls eerily silent. The doctor quietly says, "I'm sorry, she's dead." Lorraine breaks down in tears, her cries echoing through the room. But then, almost a minute later, the faint wail of a baby fills the air. Relief washes over Ed and Lorraine, and they name their daughter Judy. Ed and Lorraine raise Judy while continuing their work as paranormal investigators. Over the years, they collect countless cursed objects from their cases, each acting as a conduit for various demons. They store these items safely in an artifact room, with each one sealed through prayers performed by Father Gordon, a priest they met during one of their investigations. As Judy grows older, it becomes clear that she has inherited her mother's gift, the ability to see spirits. Lorraine teaches her a special rhyme, one that helps Judy ground herself and return to reality whenever she encounters these spirits. 22 years pass, and now, in a quiet Pennsylvania neighborhood, we meet another family, the Smurls. The family consists of Jack Smurl and his wife Janet, their 4 daughters, Heather, Dawn, Kager, and Shannon, and Jack's elderly parents. Today is Heather's confirmation day, and the family is over the moon with excitement. That evening, they gather around the dinner table. Heather's grandfather presents her with a gift, an antique mirror. The moment she unwraps it, their dog Simon starts barking wildly. Heather thanks her grandfather politely, though the mirror fills her with an unsettling feeling. Later, Janet's mother brings out the cake. As Heather leans in to blow out the candle, it goes out on its own. Heather accuses Dawn of blowing it, but Dawn swears she didn't. Suddenly, the dining room light fixture crashes down onto the table, startling everyone. Meanwhile, Ed and Lorraine Warren have retired from active investigations and now lecture at colleges about the entities they've faced. Lorraine talks about one of their most complicated cases, Annabelle, and explains how it preys on vulnerable individuals and manipulates them. Most students aren't interested. One jokingly asks, "So, are you Ghostbusters?" Lorraine chuckles. "No," she replies, "but we did see the movie." Another student asks, "Why'd you stop taking cases?" Ed simply explains that they decided to focus on other parts of their lives. As the students file out laughing, only Judy remains behind. Later, at dinner in a small restaurant, Ed vents his frustration that their life's work is being mocked like an SNL skit. Lorraine gently reminds him, "They're just kids, Ed. They are having fun." Judy looks at her dad and asks, "Dad, why didn't you tell them the truth? That you stopped taking cases because of your heart?" It's revealed that Ed suffered a heart attack during one of their investigations. His doctor warned him that another one could be fatal. Ed waves it off with a chuckle. Sounds like something an old man would say. Trying to lighten the mood, Judy asks if she can bring her boyfriend Tony to Ed's upcoming birthday party. Lorraine agrees immediately. Ed, reluctantly, does too. Lorraine notices Judy quietly humming the rhyme she taught her as a child. Glancing over, Lorraine catches a glimpse of a pale hand retreating behind Judy. She screams, then quickly apologizes. Back at the Smurls' house, Janet receives a call from a friend. As she talks, the phone cord is yanked from her. She shouts at the girls, thinking they are playing a prank, but then sees both of them heading upstairs. Swallowing hard, Janet turns on the light in the closet, only to find that it's empty. Upstairs, Kager and Shannon are playing when Shannon realizes her doll, Susie, is missing. Then she hears its familiar voice saying, "Mommy, Mommy," coming from Heather's room. She follows the sound and freezes as the doll suddenly floats into the air. Behind it stands an old woman with a sinister smile. Shannon screams and bolts. Later, Shannon tells her family what she saw, but no one believes her. After dinner, Heather confides in Dawn that the mirror gives her a strange feeling. Dawn suggests they just throw it out, but Heather hesitates, saying their grandfather would be heartbroken if he found out. Dawn smirks and says, "Tomorrow's trash day." The two girls carry the heavy mirror outside and set it down with the rest of the garbage. The next morning, the trash truck collects the garbage, crushing the mirror in its compactor. At the same time, Dawn suddenly begins to vomit. Panicked, their parents rush her to the hospital. Then Heather goes to check the sink and freezes. Shards of glass glint among the blood. Meanwhile, Lorraine busies herself preparing for Ed's birthday party. Just then, Judy arrives with Tony. Noticing his unease, she reassures him, "My mother already likes you." "What about your father?" Tony asks nervously. Judy only laughs. Ed opens the door, and Judy wishes him a happy birthday, with Tony doing the same. Inside, Judy introduces Tony to Father Gordon. "What do you do, Tony?" the priest asks. Tony admits that he's currently unemployed, but Judy quickly adds that he used to be a cop. Later, Tony notices the artifacts room and asks Judy what's inside. She replies, "All the skeletons." An hour later, Judy goes upstairs to her childhood room, reminiscing about old memories. Suddenly, she hears the creaking of an armchair, and sitting there is the Annabelle doll. Judy freezes. She's had a brush with Annabelle before. Once as a child, when her parents had left her alone shortly after acquiring the doll, but luckily her parents came and saved her. And a second time, when her babysitter's friend deliberately touched it, unleashing its power. That time, Judy managed to contain Annabelle by playing an exorcism video. Judy begins chanting the rhyme her mother taught her. The doll vanishes. At that moment, Tony appears in the doorway. Seeing Judy breathless and pale, he asks, "Are you okay?" Tony knows about Judy's abilities and her power to see spirits. Judy reassures him that she's okay. He asks her to explain what she was saying before he came in, and she tells him it's a technique her mother taught her to temporarily shut off her senses. Curious, Tony asks her to recite it again. As she does, he leans in and kisses her. Just then, Lorraine walks in. The two quickly break apart. Lorraine tells Tony that Ed is in the garage playing games with the boys and is looking for an extra player. Tony happily agrees to go. Judy excuses herself, but Lorraine stops her and asks about the incident at the restaurant, questioning whether she's been seeing spirits more often lately. At first, Judy denies it, but she eventually admits that she has. Judy insists that she can handle it, but Lorraine, speaking from her own experience, tells Judy that she can't, and that the only thing she can do is shut them out. Shortly after, both of them go to the garage to watch the game. Ed plays well and beats Tony, but his heart starts pounding hard, and he takes a deep breath to steady himself. Judy leaves to get a drink, while Tony nervously approaches Ed and Lorraine to ask for their blessing to propose to Judy. Even though it has only been 6 months, Tony says that Judy is the one for him. Lorraine tells him that their family isn't like any other, and Tony nods, understanding. She then adds that she and Ed got engaged when they barely knew each other because he was being shipped out, but they just knew they were meant to be together. Lorraine smiles and tells Tony that he has their blessing. though Ed doesn't look entirely convinced. Just then, Judy comes back into the garage and notices the ring box. Tony tries to hide it, but Judy, excited, asks him if it is for her. Tony admits that it is, and Judy, with a big smile, says yes. Seeing his daughter happy finally convinces Ed. Night falls. Father Gordon assures Ed that Judy has good instincts and that he doesn't need to worry. He then tells them that a few families have reached out for help with hauntings and asks if they are willing to take the case, but Lorraine insists that they aren't looking to go back. Meanwhile, Jack Smurl arrives home and informs his family that Father Jensen has submitted their case to the church. In the meantime, Heather suggests going to a motel, but her mother reminds her that there are 8 of them and they can't afford it. Dawn argues that they can't keep living in this haunted house. Jack cuts in and explains that the church has a process where investigators come to document the supernatural activity, and if it's real, the church send exorcists. But Dawn insists that it's real, but her father doesn't believe her, and she storms off. At midnight, Jack hears a creaking sound in the bedroom and sees an old lady before he begins to levitate. In the living room, Heather inserts her confirmation cassette into the VCR and fast-forwards to the part where the candle blew out by itself. After a few tries, she spots the old lady beside her, blowing out the candle. Suddenly, a man wielding an axe attacks Heather. Hearing her scream, Janet wakes up and sees her husband floating in midair. She rushes downstairs and finds Heather, who mutters that someone is in the house. The family finally has enough. Jack decides to reach out to the media, hoping someone might help them. Their story quickly becomes the hottest topic, and soon Jack and Janet are invited for an interview, where they recount the terrifying events that have been happening inside their home. A few days later, Lorraine and Judy visit a wedding boutique for some last-minute stitching on Judy's wedding dress. Brenda, the boutique owner, welcomes them warmly before leading Judy into the dressing room. Brenda begins stitching the dress when she hears the phone ringing. She excuses herself to answer it. Judy admires her reflection in the mirror, smiling at how perfect the dress looks. At first, everything appears normal, and she sees herself clearly. But then she realizes that one of her reflections isn't moving with her at all. The dressing room door opens, and thinking it's Brenda, Judy relaxes. But when she looks down, she sees an old lady. Judy screams for her mother and begins reciting the rhyme. The old lady vanishes, but Judy's reflection suddenly reaches out and grabs her by the throat, choking her. Judy gasps and struggles as Lorraine and Brenda burst into the room. Meanwhile, Father Gordon arrives at the Smurl residence. He's immediately met by Janet. Gordon asks about the ambulance outside. Janet tells him that her mother-in-law has fallen down the stairs, pushed by something unseen. "Things have been getting worse, Father," Janet admits, "but I'm really grateful you're here. I honestly thought the church had forgotten about us." Father Gordon quietly explains that the church doesn't know he's here. He reveals that he came on his own from Connecticut, having followed their story in the news. He tells Janet that he has handled similar cases before and believes he might be able to help. He begins reciting verses from the Bible while blessing the rooms with holy water. But as he sprinkles water in the basement, it evaporates instantly. Alarmed, he steps back, clutching his crucifix, and quickly makes his way upstairs. He tells Janet that there's definitely something present in the house and that he's going to the church to get help. A short while later, Father Gordon arrives at the local church. Approaching the front desk, he tells the receptionist that he needs to see Bishop McKenna immediately. She calls into the office and informs Father Gordon that he will be out in a moment. As Father Gordon waits, his nose suddenly starts bleeding. He wipes it away, then looks out the hall after hearing a faint noise. When he turns back, the receptionist is gone. The phone on the desk starts ringing. Hesitantly, he picks it up and hears Judy's soft voice say, "You can go now." Then the door closes. He quickly grabs his cross and begins reciting a verse, but the cross bursts into flames, burning his hand. Screaming in pain, he drops it. His expression changes. His eyes glaze over as if something takes control of him. Almost possessed, he picks up a wire and wraps it around his neck. Moments later, Father Gordon hangs himself. Meanwhile, Ed and Tony are in the garage. Tony manages to repair a motorbike, impressing Ed. Ed smiles, then decides to show him the artifact room. He warns Tony not to touch anything, explaining that every item there is either cursed or used in ritualistic practices. Tony, curious, asks why they keep such objects instead of destroying them. Ed explains that sometimes destroying these things only makes matters worse. Trapping them here is the safest way to contain their evil. Tony asks how many cases they've handled. Maybe 1,000, Ed replies. Tony is stunned. Ed tells him that he and Lorraine started when they were about his age. Then Ed becomes quiet for a moment before sharing something personal. He tells Tony that Judy was stillborn for almost a minute, the longest minute of their lives. She may be your fiancé, he says softly, but to us, she'll always be that little baby who fought to live. The next day, they attend Father Gordon's funeral. After the service, Judy gently places her hand on his coffin and suddenly feels a vision. Disturbed, she walks off silently. A man approaches Ed and Lorraine, introducing himself as Father Ziegler. He explains that Gordon always spoke highly of them and deeply believed in the work they did together. As he walks away, Judy asks where Father Gordon's body was found. Pennsylvania, Father Ziegler replies. The next morning, while washing the dishes, Lorraine notices the sink isn't draining. She reaches in to clear it and pulls out her locket. Then the sink fills with blood. Shocked, she screams for Ed. He rushes in as she gasps, "Something's wrong with Judy." Before Ed can ask more, there's a knock at the door. Tony stands outside, pale and breathless. "Judy's gone," he says. "She went to Pennsylvania." They immediately drive out and arrive at the Smurl house. Lorraine, tense and determined, tells Ed that their only goal is to find Judy and take her straight home. Outside, reporters swarm the lawn, shouting questions, but the Warrens push through them and knock on the door. Jack Smurl answers, recognizing them immediately, and invites them inside. They spot Judy. Lorraine rushes to her and pulls her into a hug, asking what she's doing here. Judy explains, "Father Gordon was here. He came before he died. I put 2 and 2 together and found them." Lorraine, clearly worried, tells the Smurls that they have to leave, but Judy steps between them and raises her voice. She tells her parents to stop running. "You always taught me that we don't turn our backs on people who need help," she says. "This family needs you. Just like the others did. Even when I didn't understand it as a kid. I do now." Lorraine looks at Ed, and after a moment they both decide to help. Meanwhile, Judy pulls Tony aside and shares her vision, how she saw Father Gordon die. When Tony asks if she told her mother, Judy shakes her head, saying she didn't want to worry her. She adds quietly that there's something else, something that wants her to be here. Later, Lorraine explores the house and comes across a small music box on a shelf. She turns the crank and listens as the soft, haunting tune fills the room. Outside, Ed is cooking pancakes for breakfast. Tony joins him and asks if this is what a normal case looks like. Ed chuckles and says there's never such a thing as a normal case. He tells him that one thing that always remains the same in every case is the fear. Demons can sense fear, Ed says. It will try to isolate them and use their fears against them. So part of the job is to let them know they aren't alone. Then Ed asks Tony why he quit being a police officer. Tony explains that one day, he and his partner responded to a domestic violence call. When they arrived, the suspect opened the door, shoved a gun in his face, and pulled the trigger. But the gun didn't fire. Later, when they arrested him, they discovered the weapon was fully loaded. Tony wistfully says that there is a world where he never got to marry Judy or have children. So the next day, he quit the force and bought the ring. Sometime later, Judy approaches Lorraine and snaps a picture of her. Smiling, she tells her mother she wants to document everything since she's never actually seen them at work before. Suddenly, they hear a noise from upstairs. Lorraine tells Judy to stay downstairs while she goes to investigate. She walks carefully into one of the bedrooms and sees a spirit on the bed. A shadow flickers past the wall, and she follows it into the basement. There, she's struck by a powerful vision. She tells Ed afterward that she saw 3 people, a husband, his wife, and the wife's mother, who once lived on this land, long before the house was built. One day, the husband discovered his wife's affair and killed both women with an axe. Lorraine suspects that a greater entity is at work, using the spirits of the man and his victims as a cover-up. Ed asks what the entity wants and why it's been haunting them for so long, but Lorraine doesn't have an answer. Meanwhile, Judy hears her mother's voice calling her name. She follows the sound up to the attic. There, she discovers a cracked mirror. As she reaches out and touches the cracks, A piece of chalk rolls across the floor. On the dusty wall, Judy reads the words, "Did you miss me?" Judy's blood runs cold. She knows immediately it's Annabelle. She turns to run, but hears Kager's voice calling for help from another room. When she goes to check, she finds the Annabelle doll waiting for her. The doll chases after her, and Judy stumbles back, tumbling down the stairs. Ed and Lorraine hear the crash and rush to her side. Judy, shaking, tells them there's something in the attic. Together they go up and find the same mirror, the one from their first case, the same dark cracks spreading like veins. Lorraine touches the mirror. For a moment she doesn't move. Then she tells Ed that this time the mirror feels different, that something has changed. Ed and Lorraine share the story of the mirror with the Smurls, explaining how they first encountered it during their very first case. Lorraine adds quietly that, after all these years, it has finally found them again. Dawn, confused, insists that she and Heather threw that mirror away. Lorraine shakes her head. "With these things, it's never that simple," she says. "It wasn't done with you. It wasn't done with us." Dawn then asks about the woman from the antique store. Lorraine explains that it was their first case, and because of the mirror, they nearly lost their child. The risk was too great, which is why they never went back. They decide to take the mirror back to Connecticut and seal it in the Warrens' artifact room. Inside, Judy has developed a fever. Up in the attic, Ed warns everyone not to look directly into the mirror or touch it. He recites a verse, and they carefully wrap the mirror in a blessed cloth before carrying it down the stairs. Outside, Tony goes to start the car, but the engine sputters and dies. Back inside, Ed and Jack continue to move the mirror, but suddenly the strap securing the mirror loosens. With every step they take, Judy's condition worsens. The cover slips off. Jack glances at the mirror and freezes. The old lady stares back at him, and he screams in terror as he falls from the attic. Ed loses his grip on the mirror, and it crashes down, crushing Jack's foot. Lorraine and Janet rush out at the commotion, but Ed shouts for them to go back to their rooms. Jack groans in pain but insists he's fine and asks Ed to free his foot. Outside, Tony finally manages to start the car. But as he's about to drive up, he spots the old lady standing in the middle of the road. He swerves violently to avoid her and crashes into the fence. Inside, the lights flicker, then go out completely. Lorraine shuts the front door as wind howls through the cracks. Then, faintly, she hears a music box playing. Heart pounding, she follows the sound and finds Judy's bed empty. She looks around and sees her daughter crouched in the corner. The entity has completely possessed Judy. The demon speaks through her, saying that they've been waiting for little Judy for a long time to come back to them. Then, with a sudden force, it shoves Lorraine backwards, sending her tumbling down into the basement. Simon, their dog, barks and charges, but the demon flings him aside. Outside, Tony yells for Judy, pounding on the door. Ed hears the shouting, rushes down, and freezes at the sight of his daughter possessed. The demon places its cold, spectral hand on Ed's chest, making his heart pound violently. Meanwhile, Tony tries breaking through the front door, but it won't budge. He circles the house, searching for another way in. Down in the basement, Lorraine struggles to her feet, only to see the spirit of the man with the axe emerging from the shadows. He swings toward her, but Tony opens the door just in time. Meanwhile, Ed takes his heart medicine, steadying himself. He tells Janet to take her family and get out. Jack, having freed his foot, helps his family escape. Lorraine rushes to Ed, breathless, saying the demon's true target was never the Smurls. It was always Judy. Ed tells her to grab the book, and they race to the attic, where Judy is suspended by a rope around her neck. Both Ed and Tony manage to cut Judy free, but moments later, all three tumble through the drywall ceiling. Judy remains unconscious. Ed and Tony rush to her side, performing CPR. The seconds stretch endlessly until, finally, Judy gasps and opens her eyes. Before they can even breathe in relief, the mirror begins to spin violently. Ed reads from the Bible to exorcise the demon, but it burns the Bible and the mirror flies closer towards them, pinning Tony to the floor. Judy begins to mutter the rhyme, the same one Lorraine taught her to silence spirits. Lorraine takes her daughter's hand. "Don't shut yourself off this time, Judy. Look at it. We can stop this." Lorraine, Judy, and Ed place their hands on the mirror. Judy tells the entity, "You're not there." The mirror shatters, finally ending the haunting. A few days later, the cursed mirror is placed in the Warrens' artifact room. Ed tosses the key to Tony. Weeks later, it is finally Judy and Tony's wedding day. After the ceremony, Lorraine tells Ed about the vision she had last night. She says, "I saw our future, Ed. We become grandparents, and we finally write the book. It's terrible, but it shows our journey. We still give lectures at colleges, we still have adventures, and we help people whenever we can. And when we are old, Tony and Judy visit us with their children, and the house is filled with warmth and love." Ed smiles. "I'm looking forward to it.